What's up, everyone? This is Alex Rome, and I come from my website, alexromesound.com, where I have music production courses, sound banks, and a couple other services like mastering and private lessons. Go hit up alexromesound.com if you're interested in any of those things. But today, I wanted to do something extremely important, and that is show you how to balance a track. And I've never wanted to do this more after yesterday's track submissions. After listening to those track submissions, I would say 99% of the track submissions that I listened to yesterday on live stream were off balance in some way, and it definitely sounded like 100% of those you guys did not take the time to balance and mix those appropriately. It sounded like you just produced the track and kind of mixed it as you went, which is not really the way you should do it, because then you end up with a track that just sounds all off balance. Balancing is the most important part of mixing. There's EQing and then there's stereo imaging, but if your track is off balance, that can really hurt your track. So here's what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna take a beat. I'm going to take my Lil Peep style beat, and I'm going to show you how to balance a track perfectly. Balancing is incredibly hard, and it will take you a really long time to get right, but I'm going to show you what to do after you produce your track. Alright, so we have our beat. It sounds like this. And then what we want to do is just scrap all the volumes. All the volumes. We want these things to be down to 0. And this is what you should do. I know it's going to hurt at first, but you have to do this. Put all your volumes down to 0, and then we're going to work in the instruments in like levels of importance. So the most important instruments we're going to balance first and get a perfect balance in those instruments, and then we're going to keep working on from there. Shout out to the people who are going to watch this whole video. My tutorials don't get as good a viewer retention as like some of the more entertaining ones. I think that's interesting. So shout out to you if you're going to watch this whole video, because you're going to learn something really valuable. Alright, so here's what I'm going to do. Whoops. Oh, gotta put down the producer tag. Ooh, alright. So, with any beat, if you're working in hip-hop, or you're working in electronic, or you're working in pop, start with the kick and the snare. They're the first things that you have to get right, because everything you're going to mix into the back of them. And when you get the kick, I like to put it its level, just like so it's just touching yellow, like right here. And then what I want to do is I want to get the snare and bring that in. So let's put the track stack at 0. And then let's bring in the snare. What you want to do is you want to bring it in and balance it audibly, and then visually check out the levels. Your kick and your snare should be somewhat even. Your snare can't be louder than your kick, though. If anything, your kick could be louder than your snare, I think, but your snare can't be louder than your kick, or else it's going to appear like it's in front of your most important element, which is your kick. So that audibly sounds good and visually looks good. So then what we do is we take the next most important layers and we bring them in. And they're going to be the hi-hats and the open hi-hats and any extra drums that I have. I cannot make any of these drums louder than my kick and snare, though. Mind you, after you do this, it still won't be 100% right, and you should not do this on the day you produce the track, unless you're taking a big break in between the time you laid everything out, got your first mix down. You should do this like on a set of fresh ears. Alright, now let's bring in these splashes right here. See, these can get really loud, and these can get really bad and like dangerous if you have these too loud. I have a little reverse thing here. This goes for any genre too. Your kick and your snare should carry the drum beat, and then everything else, the hats, the splashes, should all be behind those. With balancing, something extremely important to note is that anything that is louder than another thing will appear like they're in front of that thing. We won't the first thing we won't say is like, oh, the snare's too loud. What you'll perceive is the snare's in front of everything. So what we want to do when balancing is we want the kick and the snare to be like carrying everything out front, and then everything else is like slightly behind those. It's like a structure. If your bass line is bigger than your kick, then it just is it's like one of the worst sounding things you could ever do. Unless like the style of your song, there's meant to be a tiny kick, which in hip hop, pop, and electronic is not the case. Alright, let's bring these in. Okay, so now my drums are balanced, and next thing that we want to do is we want to bring in the instruments behind the drums. The drums have to cut through everything exactly as they're cutting through right now. So if there was no instruments, we can hear the drums as they are now, and if there was instruments, I still want to hear the drums like I'm hearing them right now. So that means our instruments can't overtake anything in this drum loop. Let's put our stack at 0. I'm just doing this like an idiot. And the next instrument I want to bring in will be the bass. This is a really This is a really good time to sidechain your bass, because you want your kick to cut through it. You don't want your bass to cut through your kick, or else you're gonna lose your kick. That goes for any of those genres, like I just said. You don't have to sidechain hard. If you're in like hip hop or pop, you're not gonna do anything intense to the bass line. You're not gonna chop through it with a sidechain, but you do want to sidechain it. I like to just feel my cone, make sure my kick still comes through, because I don't have a subwoofer in here, so it's like actually really hard to mix bass, so I have to rely visually. And my snare, kick, and bass should be relatively even. Everything else should be slightly behind those. Now when we bring in the leads, in hip-hop tracks, your leads should be behind your bass like a tad. Not like too hard. Like I wouldn't like stress that too much because it's actually really difficult to get these balanced correctly sometimes. But if anything, I don't want that spike to be above the bass, like we see it spiking. This is an atmosphere. Atmospheres are like in the danger zone for being too... Atmospheres are in the danger zone for being too loud. A lot of people make their atmospheres too loud. I make my atmospheres too loud like every time. That's why I have to resort to balancing to get them right. Because these are not the lead, these are the lead. And then remember, when we get vocals on this, which we don't, like I never had a plan to get vocals on this beat in particular, but you don't want anything that could potentially harm this, because this will be that layer that we hear right under the vocal. Like you can do like little fine tunes to how loud you essentially want some of those more important layers. But there you go, guys. That is how you'll balance your beat. And so what I would say is balance it like this on a set of clean ears. So don't do this right after you produce the beat. Like take a break, go get a sandwich, do whatever. But don't do this after you produce the beat, because then you're in this weird mindset where you want to hear everything loudly because you spent so much time on each individual layer that it's important for you to hear everything like at the same volume. But that's not what you should do. You should always stick to your important layers. The layers that are out front, the simple ones that are always in mono, the vocals, the drums, like the kick and the snare, they should always be out front. And so if you have a song, the layers that should only be in the mono should be the kick, snare, and the vocals. And so they're the ones that you're going to sit out front, and then everything else has to be like in the background. Nothing can be up front as close as the kick, snare, and the vocals, and the bass. The bass has to be up front too. But hope you took some value from this video. If you did, hit me up with a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I love reading your comments. Stay tuned for next video.